Good morning, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Pearson and I work as a Senior Enabling Advisor at CABE. And I'm going to talk to you this morning about building schools for the future and how CABE is involved in this programme to ensure design quality in schools. So first of all, I'm just going to say a little bit about CABE and what we do. So as Esther said, we are the government's advisor on architecture, urban design and public space. We're jointly funded by two departments, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport and the Department for Communities and Local Government. We have a staff of around 100 and we're based here in London. And what do we do? Well, our passion is about inspiring people to demand good design. And we aim to influence people who are commissioning buildings, public buildings, to choose good design, and through that to improve the quality of the built environment and the quality of life through good design. Building schools for the future, what is it? Well, it's a government programme and it's worth £45 billion. It's a huge amount of money. And this is being spent between now and 2020. And the purpose is to refurbish or rebuild every single secondary school in England. And this money is being used to transform education. So what does that mean? So the investment is going to go into the buildings, school buildings, and that is, the buildings are going to be a catalyst for transforming education. And that means that the buildings will incorporate new ways for young people to be taught and to learn. And the government is aiming to raise educational standards and raise skills so that young people of today go on and be an effective workforce of tomorrow. So, for example, one new way of teaching and learning is something called personalised learning. So this is when students take part in deciding what they learn and how they learn. And this is done on an individual basis. So in terms of how a building might be designed, it means that a school needs to have spaces which are flexible, spaces where teachers can teach in large groups but also in small groups. Then there's also something called schools within a schools. So this is where a large school is divided up into smaller communities, and that means that the students are working with, can identify with, are nurtured in their teaching and learning within a smaller community. And then there's things like project learning. So rather than students going to individual classes on history, geography, maths, they are doing projects which incorporate all those strands of the curriculum into an individual project. So building schools for the future is financed through a private finance initiative, and local authorities receive their funding on the basis of their social and educational needs. And contractors put together teams to bid for this work. So in it's financed by the contractor, and they will draw in architects, engineers, landscape architects, facilities managements to form teams to bid for this work for the local authorities. And the local authority will choose one of these bidding teams to form what's called as a local educational partnership. And that local educational partnership, or LEP, will design and build all the schools in a local authority, and it may be that the local authority will ask them to design and build other projects in the local authority. For example, it could be hospitals or schools buildings, sorry, not schools, but libraries, other types of public building. So how does it all work? So I'm now going to give you a whistle-stop tour of a very complex process. So before anything starts, before a local authority becomes a BSF project, it needs to assess something called their readiness to deliver. So they need to look at, can they deliver this project? Do they have the resources, the ability to deliver this project? And then they will submit a document to the Department for Children, Schools and Families. It used to be called the Department for Education and Skills, so it's now the DCSF. And once they have approval from the DCSF, they are part of BSF and the project begins. Oh, skipped a slide there. Oops. So then the local authorities spend the first 7 months working out their strategy for change. So in this document, they have to imagine and describe their educational vision. So how is education going to be delivered over the next 20 years? And included in that, they have to describe what they're going to do with their whole school's estate, all the schools that form part of the local authority. And they have to decide which schools are going to be refurbished and which schools are going to be rebuilt. And then that document, the strategy for change, needs approval from the DCSF before going on to the next stage of BSF. That's it, right. So then the local authority will spend the next 10 months working out their outline business case. So in that, they will scope the whole of the project. They will choose their sample schools. Now, the sample schools are the schools which the local authority choose for the bidders to do designs for. There's normally 3, and there might be 2. And so in the strategy for, in the outline business case, there will be a detailed brief for each of their sample schools. And there will also be a strategic brief for all the other schools in their estate. And then at the end of that time, they put a notice in the official journal of the European Union. So they then spend the next year or so selecting their private sector partner, who they are going to form the local educational partnership with. And this is a very busy time. In that time, they will form a long list and then a short list of bidders. And then they will make a short list of 3 bidding teams. And those 3 bidding teams have 16 weeks to put together designs for the 3 sample schools. And in the bids, they'll also include information about how they're going to borrow money to fund the construction, how they're going to manage the buildings for the next 25 years, how they're going to be a business partner to the local authority, and how they're going to manage information, construction and technology. And also how they're going to support the local authority's educational vision. So the local authority will receive these proposals, and they will select 2 out of the 3. And then with those 2 remaining bidders, they will enter a period of, it's called continued dialogue. So that's where the local authority will continue to, well, the schemes will be continued to be revised. And at the end of that time, the local authority will choose one of those bidders, and they will be the preferred bidder, and they will sign on the dotted line, reach a financial agreement, and then the local educational partnership will be formed. Then at that point, the sample schools, they'll start to be built on site. And the preferred bidder will start to work on the later schemes. And, as I said before, they may be asked by the local authority to build other public buildings for the local authority. So, what do CABE do within BSF? So, we have been funded by DCSF to work with every single local authority. And we do this at 2 stages of the BSF process. The first of these is during the first 18 months. And CABE have a panel of enablers. These are qualified construction professionals, and each local authority gets 15 days of an enabler's time during the first 18 months of BSF. And their purpose is to give strategic advice to the local authority on how to achieve well-designed schools within BSF. Then, once the bidders submit their proposals, the CABE Schools Design Panel are going to review all the designs of the bidders, and the local authority will receive a design evaluation of those sample schools, and then they can use that to decide which bidders they choose or don't choose to use to form the LEP. So just a bit more detail about what the enabler does. So they give strategic advice, and they are aiming to raise the local authority's awareness of the importance and the value of good design, because good design has to be thought about earlier. It's so important to think about good design earlier. It's so costly to correct bad design later, and it's so much cheaper to think about it early and do it well at the beginning. They will also advise the school on the appointment of somebody called a client design advisor, and that's a very key appointment within BSF. The client design advisor will work much more closely with the individual sample schools in terms of talking to them about their brief, going to visits to sites, involving the students and the teachers and the stakeholders in designing the scheme. And then the enabler will also give advice on the procurement process, how to get a good quality bidding team, They will do things like make presentations to the project board in terms of raising design awareness that way. And they will also review the strategy for change and the outline business case, so the key documents in BSF. Then the schools design panel, they are involved in looking at the design quality of the sample schemes. And John is going to talk about that in much more detail after me. And so they will look at the sample schemes, but we will also be reviewing sort of selected schemes later on in the BSF process. So once a local authority has selected their bidder and they've done their sample schemes, they're still designing other schools, we will also look at other designs to make sure that the design quality remains consistent. So in general, our support for local authority is about raising design aspirations, it's about involving the stakeholders, it's about appointing a good client design advisor, making sure local authorities have good architects in their bidding teams, making sure people invest the time early on, and also about giving design evaluations of the scheme so that they choose the best bidder. That's all those. And that is a bonus shot of some toilets, actually, which I won't go into, but there we are. So thank you very much.